In the eerie calm of dawn, the house that once promised safety now feels like a sinister trap, its walls echoing with our terror and loss. The grim fate of Lucas, torn apart by the Wendigo, is a haunting presence in every silent room and shadowed corner. With heavy hearts, we realize we cannot remain here, in this tomb of memories. Our decision to leave, though filled with dread, is born of desperate necessity. As we step into the cold morning, the world outside is shrouded in an unsettling silence, broken only by the mournful cries of the wind. A sound we can no longer distinguish from the distant howls of the Wendigo. Our surroundings, veiled in mist, appear ghostly and uninviting. The path ahead is unclear, both literally and figuratively, as we embark on this perilous journey back to town. Every step is laden with tension. The familiar path, once a comforting routine, now feels like a treacherous passage through a haunted land. The trees, stripped of their leaves, resemble grotesque figures, their branches reaching out like gnarled skeletal fingers against the gray sky. We flinch at every rustling leaf and snapping twig, our nerves frayed to the breaking point, anticipating horrors lurking in every shadow. As we traverse the misty landscape, the forest seems to have lost its life. The usual chatter of birds and rustle of small animals is conspicuously absent, as if the entire woodland has been abandoned, or worse, silenced by the lurking presence of the Wendigo. The fog clings to the ground like a living entity, adding a surreal quality to our surroundings, as if we are walking through a liminal space between reality and nightmare. The occasional creak of a distant tree or the sudden flight of a startled bird sends shivers down our spines, a constant reminder of the fragile line between life and a gruesome death at the hands of the unseen predator. Our journey back to town is slow and laborious. We're exhausted, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, each of us wrestling with our own fears and the shared trauma of what we've experienced. The haunting image of Lucas's mutilated body is a specter that follows us, a grim portent of the Wendigo's savagery, and a stark reminder of our own vulnerability. As we finally approach the outskirts of town, the fog begins to lift, but it does little to alleviate the sense of dread that has settled over us. The town appears desolate, the streets empty and silent, as if abandoned or hiding from the same terror that we have faced. The normal sounds of life are conspicuously absent, replaced by a palpable tension that seems to hang in the air like a foreboding mist. We reach the local diner, one of the few places showing signs of life. We take a seat in a quiet corner, trying to blend in, to find some semblance of normalcy in a cup of coffee. But the sense of isolation and fear is overwhelming, a contrast to the comforting mundanity of the diner's interior. That night, as we attempt to rest in a rented room above the diner, our sleep, when it comes, is filled only with nightmares. I dream of the forest, of being hunted, of running desperately through the trees as the Wendigo's breath hot on my neck. But the most terrifying part of the dream is the transformation. I become the Wendigo, my body twisting into a monstrous form, my mind filled with an insatiable hunger. In the dream, I turn on my friends, their screams echoing in my ears as I wake up gasping, my body drenched in sweat, the remnants of the nightmare clinging to me like a second skin. The room is dark. The only sound, the soft breathing of my friends, asleep despite their own fears. I lie there in the dark, my heart racing, trying to convince myself it was just a dream. But the truth is, the line between dream and reality has become terrifyingly thin. The first light of dawn spills through the thin curtains of our room, painting a subdued, almost haunting glow across the faded wallpaper. I lie awake, the horrors of my nightmare still pressing heavily on my mind. Tom and Sarah, still asleep, show faint traces of distress on their faces. In an effort to find some respite from the oppressive atmosphere, I quietly slide out of bed, taking care not to wake the others. The floorboards creak softly under my weight as I move towards the window, peering out at the town below. The streets are beginning to stir with the early morning routines, but this semblance of normality feels like a distant world to us now. I watch as people start their day, blissfully unaware of the lurking horror that has enveloped our lives. The mundane activities of the townsfolk, opening shops, walking dogs, the occasional jogger, seem like scenes from another lifetime. We are isolated in our knowledge, in our experience of the darkness that prowls just beyond the periphery of this seemingly peaceful town. Turning away from the window, I take in the room again, our temporary haven that feels more like a cell. The walls are adorned with faded pictures of landscapes, the images now appearing almost mocking in their tranquility. The room's furnishings are sparse and worn, the small table littered with our belongings, a reminder of our hasty retreat from what was once a safe haven. As I sit on the edge of the bed, the events of the past days replay in my mind. The inescapable fear, the haunting visions, the brutal loss of Lucas. The weight of our situation is daunting, and I can feel the edges of despair creeping into my thoughts. Tom stirs in his sleep, muttering something unintelligible, a frown creasing his forehead. Sarah, lying on her side, clutches the blanket tightly, her expression one of deep unease, even in sleep. As the morning sun ascends higher, casting a crisp, golden hue over the town, our little group convenes in the cramped room, our faces reflecting the sleepless night we've just endured. The light that filters through the window does little to lift the oppressive atmosphere that has settled upon us. It feels as if the very air we breathe is tainted with a sense of impending doom. Tom, sitting at the edge of his bed, rubs his eyes wearily, his usual pragmatism now clouded by the relentless strain of our situation. Sarah, her face drawn and pale, sits by the window, her gaze lost in the distant, normal world outside, a world that seems to have abandoned us. I stand by the door, feeling trapped between the safety of the indoors and the treacherous, unknown world outside. We decide to venture downstairs in search of a meager breakfast, our movements sluggish, as if wading through an invisible morass. The diner, usually a hub of morning activity, is eerily subdued. The few patrons present are engrossed in hushed, anxious conversations, casting nervous glances at the windows as if expecting something sinister to appear at any moment. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with worry lines etched deeply on her face, serves us with a forced smile, her eyes betraying the fear that grips her. The coffee she pours is strong and bitter, much like the reality we now find ourselves in. We eat in silence, our thoughts an unspoken symphony of fear and uncertainty. After breakfast, we take a cautious walk through the town. The streets are unusually quiet, the vibrant life that once coursed through the town now reduced to a mere whisper. Shop windows display signs of hasty closures, and the few people we encounter hurry along with their heads down, as if afraid to acknowledge the creeping dread that has enveloped the town. As we walk, the sense of being watched grows stronger. It feels as though eyes are upon us from the shadows, tracking our every move. The occasional rustle of leaves or a distant creak sends chills down our spines, a constant reminder that the Wendigo's presence is never far away. We pass by the local park, its benches empty, the playground desolate. The laughter of children, once a common melody here, is now a distant memory, replaced by an oppressive silence. The trees that border the park sway gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling softly, as if whispering dark secrets. The further we walk, the more apparent the town's transformation becomes. Doors are bolted shut, curtains drawn tight. It's as if the town itself is bracing for an unseen assault, the residents hiding from an enemy they cannot comprehend. Our journey takes us to the edge of the forest, the very place where this nightmare began. The trees stand tall and foreboding, their branches like twisted arms reaching out to us. We stand there for a moment, the weight of our predicament heavy upon us. The forest, with its dark, impenetrable depths, seems to beckon, hiding secrets and horrors in its shadowy embrace. It's a siren call that we dare not answer, yet cannot fully ignore. The decision is made to rest in an abandoned cabin on the outskirts of town, a place we hope will offer some safety, some respite from the nightmare. The cabin, once a hunter's retreat, stands isolated, its wooden walls weathered, its windows dusty. It feels like stepping into another world, a place forgotten by time, untouched by the horrors that plague us. As we settle into the cabin, the afternoon light fades into evening, casting long shadows across the room. The cabin is Spartan, its furnishings basic and worn. A small fireplace, a few chairs, a table, and a couple of cots make up the entirety of its amenities. But it feels like a fortress compared to the exposed vulnerability of the diner room. We gather around the fireplace, the flickering flames casting a warm, if not entirely comforting, light. The crackling of the wood, the soft glow of the fire, offers a semblance of normalcy, a brief respite from the fear that has become our constant companion. In the dimming light, the cabin feels both a sanctuary and a prison. The rustic interior, with its creaky floorboards and the musty scent of aged wood, offers a stark contrast to the diner's faded decor. The simplicity of the cabin, with its sparse furnishings and the absence of modern distractions, creates a bubble of timelessness, a temporary disconnection from the outside world. As night falls, the three of us sit in a tense silence, each lost in our own turbulent thoughts. The only source of light is the flickering dance of the fireplace flames, casting long, quivering shadows on the walls. The soft crackling of the firewood is a soothing yet haunting melody, a soundtrack to our uneasy vigil. Tom, his face illuminated by the fire's glow, stares into the flames, his eyes reflecting a turmoil that words could never fully express. Sarah, huddled in a blanket, gazes out of the window, her eyes scanning the dense tree line for any sign of movement, any hint of the lurking menace we know is out there. I find myself pacing the small room, each step echoing slightly in the hollow space. The confinement of the cabin feels increasingly oppressive, a physical manifestation of the invisible chains forged by fear and uncertainty. The sense of isolation here, at the very edge of civilization, is palpable. The quiet of the night pierced only by the occasional distant howl of the wind. As the evening wears on, the cabin grows colder, the chill seeping through the thin walls and creeping along the floorboards. We add more wood to the fire, seeking not just physical warmth, but a psychological barrier against the cold embrace of fear. Despite the relative safety of the cabin, sleep seems an impossible luxury. Our attempts to rest are half-hearted, each of us taking turns to keep watch, too afraid to fully surrender to sleep's vulnerable embrace. The haunting image of the Wendigo, that amalgamation of myth and nightmare, looms large in our minds, a presence that refuses to be banished. Hours drag on, the night deepening around us. I stand near the window, peering out at the dense forest that encircles us, its trees hiding secrets in their dark embrace. The wind picks up, howling around the cabin with mournful cries that sound almost human. The trees sway and groan, their silhouettes against the dark sky like writhing specters. The forest, once a place of natural beauty, now feels like a living entity, malevolent and watchful. The psychological torment begins subtly. The faint scratching sounds echo outside, as if something is clawing at the cabin walls. We freeze, listening intently, our hearts racing. The sound is rhythmic, deliberate, heightening our fear with each passing moment. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stops, leaving us in a suffocating silence. The brief respite is shattered by a new horror. A voice, eerily familiar yet distorted, begins to call out from the darkness. It's my name, spoken in the voice of someone I lost long ago, someone who should not, could not be here. The voice is joined by others, a chorus of voices from our pasts, each calling out in tones of longing and despair. The effect is chilling, a cruel manipulation of our deepest memories and fears. As the cacophony of voices grows, so does our terror. We huddle closer, trying to find solace in each other's presence, but the psychological assault is relentless. The Wendigo, using its sinister powers, is playing a macabre game, eroding our sanity, breaking down our defenses. Then, in a moment of horrifying clarity, the assault becomes physical. With a thunderous crash, the door bursts open and the Wendigo enters. Its form is monstrous, its eyes burning with malevolence. The creature moves with a terrifying grace, its presence filling the room with a palpable sense of dread. Tom, in a moment of desperate bravery, lunges at the creature with a fire poker. but his efforts are in vain. The Wendigo, with a swift, brutal motion, grabs him by the shoulders and pulls horizontally, the air filled with a horribly ripping sound I don't think I'll ever forget, his screams echoing in the cabin as his blood splatters across the walls, across Sarah and me. The scene is nightmarish, a tableau of unimaginable horror. In a haze of shock and fear, Sarah and I scramble to our feet, our survival instincts kicking in. We flee from the cabin, the sounds of the Wendigo's roars and Tom's dying cries haunting our escape. The night outside is chaos, the wind howling, the trees thrashing as if in the throes of a storm. We run blindly, propelled by sheer terror, the cabin and the horrific scene it contains receding into the darkness. As we emerge from the tree line, the town comes into view through the veil of snow, a beacon of light in the darkness. But as we approach, a new horror unfolds. The Wendigo, relentless in its pursuit, begins its assault on the town. Screams fill the air, a chorus of terror and pain as the creature wreaks havoc. Buildings that had stood for decades are torn apart, their wooden beams splintering under the creature's monstrous strength. The air is filled with the turmoil of destruction, the screams of the townsfolk, and the ear-piercing roars of the Wendigo. People run in all directions, their faces etched with fear. Some try to barricade themselves in their homes, but no door, no wall, seems to offer any protection against the creature's wrath. The Wendigo's movements are unpredictable, chaotic, each attack more ferocious than the last. The night is illuminated by sudden fires, flames engulfing buildings, casting an eerie, flickering light on the scene. The fire adds to the pandemonium, the heat and smoke further disorienting the fleeing residents. Amidst the flames, the Wendigo's silhouette appears even more demonic, its shadow dancing wildly against the inferno. Sarah and I move instinctively, our bodies driven by a primal urge to survive. We duck into alleyways, hide behind overturned cars, our every move a response to the shifting tides of chaos around us. The town we knew, the streets we walked, have become an alien landscape, a war zone of fear and survival. The screams around us are a constant reminder of the stakes, the cost of being caught by the creature. We see people we've known all our lives, neighbors and friends, reduced to fleeing figures in the night, their fates uncertain. At one point, we find ourselves cornered, the Wendigo's towering form looming at the end of the alley. Its eyes find ours, glowing with a malevolent intelligence. For a moment, time seems to stand still, the air charged with the imminent threat of death. But then, miraculously, the creature turns away, drawn by another scream, another victim. We seize the opportunity, our escape a desperate sprint through the smoke and debris. We find temporary refuge behind a partially collapsed house, its walls offering meager shelter from the relentless storm. Peering around the corner, we witness a scene that encapsulates the horror of the night. A small group of survivors, huddled together, is suddenly ambushed by the Wendigo. Its attack is a blend of ferocity and precision, leaving no chance of resistance. We watch in frozen horror as one is dragged away into the darkness, their screams quickly silenced by the blizzard. Retreating from the scene, we stumble upon an overturned bus, its windows shattered, but providing a crucial shelter. Inside, a few survivors have gathered, their faces a mix of relief and despair at our arrival. The bus becomes our fragile sanctuary, a haven from the beast outside. As the night progresses, the Wendigo's assault on the town continues unabated. Its roars, sometimes distant, sometimes terrifyingly close, are a reminder of our plight. We share our stories in hushed tones, each account a testament to the creature's brutality and our own dwindling hope. The night drags on, punctuated by the sounds of the Wendigo's hunt, the occasional scream, the destruction of what little remains of the town. We sit in the bus, our bodies huddled for warmth, our minds haunted by the reality of our situation. The blizzard, unyielding and relentless, traps us as effectively as the fear of the creature outside. In our makeshift refuge, the reality of our situation weighs heavily. The knowledge that we are trapped, with no hope of escape or rescue, is a crushing burden. The Wendigo, a creature of legend and nightmare, has turned our world into a frozen hell, A place where survival is measured in moments, and hope is as fleeting as the wind in the blizzard. Then, without warning, the bus shudders violently, as if struck by an immense force. The windows, already cracked and fragile, shatter completely, letting in the icy fury of the blizzard. Through the howling wind and snow, a dark, twisted form is barely visible. The Wendigo, its eyes glowing with malevolent delight. Panic erupts inside the bus. People scramble away from the windows, their movements frantic, their cries muffled by the storm. But the Wendigo is relentless. With another powerful strike, the side of the bus caves in, creating a gaping maw through which the creature can reach its prey. The Wendigo's clawed hand reaches through the opening, its fingers grasping, searching for flesh. Its growls, a symphony of hunger and rage, fill the small space, drowning out the screams of the survivors. The creature's eyes find mine, and in that moment, time seems to stand still. The Wendigo's gaze is an abyss, a void where humanity and mercy have no place. Its breath, a fetid gust of death, washes over me, filling my senses with the stench of decay and despair. The last thing I see before the world goes black is the Wendigo's twisted smile, a promise of horrors yet to come.